In this video, we're going to show you how to replace an inner tie rod on your Toyota Tacoma. This will be located behind the front wheel. Let's get started. Using a 21mm socket, remove the 6 lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Using a 15mm wrench to hold the inner tie rod, we're going to use a 22mm wrench to break the outer tie rod nut free. Break the nut free from the outer tie rod. Be sure it moves freely. We also want it to move freely on this inner tie rod. Ours is extremely crusty and I don't think it's going to be that easy. Remove the cotter pin out of the outer tie rod. Ours isn't going to come out. We're going to use a 19mm socket. Put it over it. You may need to tap it over this. Get it all the way down. And then using an impact gun, we're going to pull the nut off and then use a drill to drill out the stud. Remove the nut. We're going to hit the side of the knuckle and pop the tie rod out of the knuckle. We're going to use a 22mm wrench to hold the inner tie rod nut. We'll use a 21mm wrench to remove the outer tie rod. As we do this, we're going to count how many times we spin this. That was about 11 turns. Your outer tie rod may be loose enough that you don't need to use a wrench on it. You may be able to just turn it by hand. I'm going to use a 15mm wrench to hold the inner tie rod. And we're going to use a 22mm socket on an impact to remove the inner tie rod nut. Since our wrench is just spinning, we're going to use a large pair of adjustables. Remove the inner tie rod nut. Pinch the clamp on the bellows boot. Remove the clamp. Using a flat blade screwdriver, we're going to go for the back clamp on the bellows boot. We're going to go inside of this little clamp, and we're going to peel it apart with a flat blade screwdriver. Open the clamp up. Using a pair of cutters, we're going to cut the band clamp off. If you're having trouble cutting, give it a good twist and it should pop. Remove the bellows boot. Grab it, pull straight off. Using a pry bar and a hammer, we're going to hit the safety washer. We're going to pop it off just of this side rim. We just want to flatten it back out. Using a large set of adjustable wrenches or an inner tie rod tool, remove the inner tie rod. Break it free and remove the inner tie rod. Be sure the washer comes with it. Install the new inner tie rod. I'm going to push this washer against this inside of the rack. Twist it and you'll feel it key into place. We want it keyed into place and we want it to sit there, and then we want to tighten that inner down to it. Torque the inner tie rod from 45 to 62 foot-pounds. Remove the jam nut. Before installing the boot, we're going to roll this edge over. Just kind of fold it on itself, just like this. Install the boot over the inner tie rod. Get the front in place. You'll feel it click in. We're going to flop the edge over the rack and install the boot. Be patient when installing the boot. Folding the edge really works. Just take your time. I have my cable tie started. I'm going to install it over the boot. Get it all the way to where it's sitting on the rack. And we're going to pull it tight. Before fully tightening this cable tie, be sure that the boot is fully seated on the rack. It's a very tight space. Take your time. Once you have it installed over that lip, we're going to take our pair of pliers. We're going to grab the cable tie. We're not going to cut it yet. We're just going to pull it so it tensions on itself. Once you have it fully tightened, go ahead and chop the end off. There's one more cable tie for the front. Get it installed. Same thing, tension it against itself. Don't put a lot of pressure on it. Just get it nice and tight. And then chop the end off. Install the jam nut. Spin the jam nut up all the way to the end. We're going to use a bit of copper anti-seize. Spray it on our inner tie rod. You could also put some in the outer. Install the outer tie rod. We're going to go 11 turns. Now that we're about 11 turns in, we're going to snug our jam nut up to the outer tie rod. Install the outer tie rod into the knuckle. My knuckle hasn't moved at all during this process. We had to slightly twist it in, so that means we're going to have to go just one turn out. Once we moved our outer tie rod out one more, our hub looks nice and flat. We're going to install our castle nut. Snug down the nut. Torque the outer tie rod nut to 67 foot-pounds. While you're doing this, be sure that the stud doesn't spin. Once you have it torqued, you can go an additional 60 degrees or until the slot in the castle nut lines up with the slot in the stud. Install a cotter pin. Bend the sides around. I'm going to chop this end off. Using a 15mm socket to hold the inner tie rod, we're going to use a 24mm socket, and we're going to snug down the jam nut. Torque this to 60 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench on it, do the best you can. Install the wheel. Get the lug nuts started. Snug down the lug nuts. Torque the wheels in a star pattern to 85 foot-pounds. We'll go around one more time. And you're good to go. Once you're done with this job, take your car to a local shop and have them do an alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.